Hello and welcome...
Sorry.
Oh, are you kidding me? Hello and welcome back to Continental Club. We are back in the East Dulwich Tavern. It's me and Mikey McCubbin. No Henry, who's on holiday. And McCubs, we were rejected this week by Zach Jalab.
Once again, yeah, Zach not showing up. No, I actually don't know what his reason was, Dukes, but I'm sure it was maybe valid.
I don't know.
You know.
I'm calling him an enemy of Continental Club now. He's no longer wanted in the East Dulwich Tavern, Zach, if you're watching this.
He does watch this as well. He told me
Does
the other
he?
day that he actually watches this more than any other Football Daily content.
He's got great taste.
He does have good taste, but you know, not good enough to to be wanting to be on here every week. But say la vie. Say la vie.
Indeed, indeed. Well, we've got a cracking show lined up for you today. We're actually talking about the shock transfers that could still happen. Now, it's been a pretty quiet window around Europe. I actually saw a message, or a tweet rather, from Carlo Garganese, friend of the show, and he tweeted out the amount of spending in the Premier League versus the rest of Europe. So get this, the Premier League has spent 466 million euros. This was as of yesterday as well, Wednesday. In the Premier League, that's been the spending. Whereas the rest of Europe, the other top four leagues put together, only 102 million euros, which does go to show that financial disparity. And I was initially a bit worried about this title, but as we film this on Thursday afternoon, there are a number of quite exciting moves that have just been talked about in the last few hours, some of whom are sort of interlinked. And we're going to kick off with the first one, which was sent in by Newcastle fan Sean 15 Mackenzie, regular contributor, who is probably crying through his Twitter page right now as he sent this in. Allan Saint-Maximin to Milan, McCubs.
Yeah.
What's going on with this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting one. It kind of came out of the blue, didn't it? But yeah, Sky Sports Sicily are reporting that Milan are exploring signing Allan Saint-Maximin as an alternative to Nicolo Zaniolo. He's obviously been talked about a lot as an option for Milan. We'll get onto him next actually, because he's been linked to a very interesting club. But yeah, Roma obviously have this valuation of around 30 million euros. Zaniolo seems pretty keen on leaving, and Mourinho has been pretty kind of bullish with him, hasn't he? He's kind of said, well, yeah, we'll sell you if anyone gives us the right offer, which we're asking. And it's clear that I think Mourinho doesn't, I don't know, I kind of feel like, you know, having worked with him for 2 years, Mourinho maybe just doesn't rate him as highly as that fee is.
Yeah.
Plus, you know, what you've said about, you know, clubs in Europe just don't have the money to be taking risks on a player like Zaniolo really this month. But yeah, so Milan would have to cough up that much money, and there hasn't been, you know, that much evidence so far that they would be willing to do that. So yeah, apparently Newcastle are now willing to listen to significant offers for Saint-Maximin. A story that's also been reported by Gianluca Di Marzio. But I'm not quite sure what valuation Newcastle have on Saint-Maximin. I can't imagine it would be less than £30 million,
No.
Especially given that there's 4 or 5 months of the season remaining. They're going for Champions League football, and you know, after the last 2 weeks, you know, that's probably in a more precarious position than it was before in terms of them getting into the top 4. So it seems weird. I know they're going for Anthony Gordon, who also plays on the left. Maybe they want to recoup some of what they would pay for Gordon. Maybe Saint-Maximin just isn't part of their long-term vision. We've seen how well they've performed in attack without Saint-Maximin for much of this season, whereas they were so heavily reliant on them before. But then also in terms of Milan, the only thing I can see with him is are they thinking long-term, like, you know, in terms of the almost inevitability that Leao will go at some point? Yeah. Do they want a kind of long-term, let's face it, downgrade on the left in terms of Saint-Maximin? Someone who I still think could thrive, though, in Italy. You know, the right-hand side is where they're most in need. We've talked about that for, you know, probably the best part of the last 2 years now. Having said that, I think Saint-Maximin probably could do a job there on the right for Milan. I think, you know, it's easy sometimes to get hung up on, you know, what side wingers are best on, but I think someone like Saint-Maximin, whose kind of entire game, you know, well, I mean, his entire game is really based around his elite dribbling numbers, isn't it? I don't think that gets too badly affected, depending on which side he's on. He does just cause chaos to defences. And I kind of feel like, yeah, whichever side that's on, like, I think he can be pretty effective. He can also play through the middle if needs be. So I think he's actually perhaps more versatile than a lot of people think. But I guess what's weird is that they signed someone like Keylor last summer. He hasn't played all that much. Are they going to then spend 6 months later a similar amount on a player who operates in a similar kind of area? Not so sure. I even think Zaniolo is, even that move I'm a little bit puzzled by. I'm not quite sure on this one. I kind of think from a Milan perspective, it would almost be better to wait till the summer. I think that they're good enough to get that top 4. I don't think they're good enough to catch Napoli at this stage. So I'm not sure why they have to panic in the last 5 days of the window. And I'm not sure why Newcastle have to sell as well, especially if they're, unless Eddie Howe, thinks Anthony Gordon can come in straight away at St James's Park and really add something that their current, front line can't. I don't see the kind of uptick in terms of Saint-Maximin out, Anthony Gordon in at this point of the season.
Yeah, I think the point you make about Milan's summer business is a really good one, to be honest. I don't think any of their summer signings have made a massive difference to that first team. Like Origi struggled with his fitness, Florenzi hasn't been in the side because Calabria is now the captain, and it feels like all their key components of that side have maybe just not had quite as good a year as last year, and Mike Maignan been injured, which has led to a massive drop-off in their defence. They've now only got the 10th best defence in Serie A. Last year, it was sort of built on an amazing defence and Rafa Leão popping up with key moments, and Olivier Giroud as well. Whereas this year, neither of those two have probably been at their best in terms of their club form at least, and they are maybe looking for a spark. In terms of Saint-Maximin, I think he'd be awesome in Italy. I do think he's incredibly talented. His output's never been magnificent. But last year, I think he completed about 40 more dribbles than anyone else in Europe's top 5 leagues.
Mad.
Obviously, that's a skill that is useful in terms of progressing the play, but maybe Milan would face sides that are probably a more deeper set than Newcastle, potentially, and that ability to beat a man in tight spaces. He's maybe better in open spaces than Milan would face. I'm not really sure. But at the same time, I just think this is a bad move for Newcastle. They are on course for Champions League football. Why upset it with even if he has been a bench option so far due to fitness issues, why upset that to bring in Anthony Gordon, whose output is even worse than Saint-Maximin, which is the weakest part of Saint-Maximin's game? I get that Anthony Gordon's a really hard-working player, his defensive numbers are really good, his pressure numbers are brilliant, but I just don't really see the point in losing Saint-Maximin to bring in Anthony Gordon. I think it'd be one of the few mistakes that Newcastle have made since that Saudi takeover. So personally, don't really see that. But as McCubs says, it's so tied in to Nicolo Zaniolo's future. And as FCB said, the link is currently, as we film this, Nicolo Zaniolo to Bournemouth, potentially. Now, I just can't see this happening. I might end up with massive egg on my face by the time this video goes live because, we might have him standing next to Gary O'Neill in a Bournemouth shirt, but I just can't see it. Partly because it's such a massive step down for him. He was supposedly the golden child of Italian football a few years ago, along with Federico Chiesa. And yes, it hasn't gone great at Roma under Jose Mourinho. His output's not been great. He's got more yellow card and red cards than goals and assists for Roma in his entire career, which isn't great in and of itself. But this is still a guy that scored in the Conference League final last year. He's clearly got quality. And Bournemouth have just signed Dango Ouattara as well from Lorient, who came in full of confidence after a great start to the season in Ligue 1. He got an assist at the weekend against Nottingham Forest. So it doesn't feel like... It feels like it's just an opportunity that Bournemouth... Obviously, if Bournemouth can sign Zaniolo, they obviously should. But I just can't see Zaniolo going for it. And I don't think Roma should agree to sell him. Like, they are in a serious top 4 battle. Now Juve have been deducted those 15 points, pending, their appeal. They're in a massive dogfight for that top 4. And it just feels like already in a side that are lacking so many goal scorers, why would you get rid of one of your only other threats or established threats in that side alongside Tammy Abraham and Paulo Dybala? So from Zaniolo's perspective, I don't really get it. From Roma's perspective, I don't really see the point in selling to Milan, one of your rivals, or Bournemouth, really, unless you're desperate for money and that relationship with Mourinho is completely cut down or cut to pieces and unrecoverable. So this one, to me, McCubs, just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to see it, to be honest. I think, I don't know, a player swapping Roma for Bournemouth just is...
Not a good sign.
It's peak English Super League, isn't it? It really would be. And I think this January window has really kind of brought home, like you were saying, the spending power of the Premier League over top European clubs. It does just baffle me. But clearly Bournemouth are willing to spend like you're saying, under this new ownership. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan personally, and yeah, hopefully Zaniolo stays. But I think I do feel like if he doesn't go in January, he probably will go in the summer from Roma. I just get that feeling that maybe his time there has come to an end. But hopefully he'll go to a Champions League level club.
Or at least one in Europe that's not fighting relegation. Bournemouth could very easily sign Zaniolo and go down quite easily. Like, they don't look like they are necessarily guaranteed to survive. And as I said, Ouattara started very well, and they'll probably spend a bit more money in January. There's talk about Nicholas Jackson as well from Southampton as we film that. He's having his medical, but there's concerns over a previous knee injury. So we'll see how that develops. So they are obviously spending money, but Bournemouth is not a solid bet if you're joining from Roma. So I don't really get that. Right, let's move on to another one, which does look a bit more likely, in Tariq Lamptey to Sporting CP. And this came in from Keith27. Now, there has been talks that Tariq Lamptey could interest Lyon, but that was if Malo Gusto was going to leave. Yep. Jean-Michel Aulas has just confirmed that he's not going to leave, although we have seen stranger things happen in the last few days of the window. That doesn't necessarily mean until it's the 1st of February, he could still leave, but I think it's unlikely. But Tariq Lamptey to Sporting CP, I think this is quite a fun loan move.
I love this, I absolutely love this. Obviously, it's a shame about Tariq Lamptey at Brighton, isn't it? Just clearly not that fancied by De Zerbi. When Pascal Gross is being picked ahead of you at right back, it's not a great sign. And I think, clearly, I've not watched enough Tariq Lamptey this year because he's been coming on in like the last 10 minutes of games.
There's barely been any minutes to watch.
So it's tough to know where he's actually at, but clearly he's not considered the player at Brighton that he was 2 years ago when he was one of the most exciting young right backs in Europe. Bayern Munich were after him.
I forget
he looked like, I think United were looking at him at one point as well. I mean, he was serious talent, and one of the real kind of cream of the crop out of that generation of Chelsea Academy graduates. To see him now, not able to get a place in, probably one of the most exciting teams in Europe now in Brighton, is a shame, because I think, the Lamptey of 1-2 years ago would have been, an excellent addition. However, Sporting CP could suit him a lot more. He's really at his best as a wing back, isn't he? Sporting obviously play that system under Amorim. Pedro Porro has, another right back who, since he was a teenager has been really highly rated, but has had, his development has kind of, was a little bit stumped before he went to Sporting. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's still only 22 years old, so like he can go there for a year or two and still have, multiple options in terms of where he could take his career next. I think in general, and I also think, young English players in general, I know Lamptey now represents Ghana, but, represented England up to under 21. I think them, going abroad has generally worked out pretty well. Look at, Marcus Edwards in the Liga Portugal. Jadon Sancho, of course. I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? But
Bino Gittins as well at Dortmund.
Yeah, of course. I would be a big fan of this move. I think to Lyon as well would have been great. I think in some ways better, just because you're playing in Ligue 1, plus slightly higher standard of football. But only one start this season, 310 league minutes. But I mean, he still has great attacking output. He still ranks in the top 5% of right backs for progressive passes. Still as progressive passes received. Still ranks in the top 3% for dribbles completed. Again, his skill set is kind of there for all to see in that sense. And at Sporting, he probably wouldn't have quite as much defensive responsibility as he would at probably Lyon, to be fair. I think this move makes a ton of sense for someone like Lamptey, who I think is just in need of confidence. Like a player that young who's had those kind of injury issues, especially after being so hyped up. That can potentially be quite tough. And I think going to Portugal would be a real lift for him.
Absolutely. Add to the limelight slightly more, add to the pressure cooker that is Premier League football. David Ornstein saying this is a loan, but who knows, maybe it could turn into a permanent move as well. But I think for 6 months, what a place to go play football when you're not playing at Brighton, you're not favoured by that new management. And a loan signifies that Brighton still do believe in you a little bit. or a lot, but just want you to get more minutes for the time being. So I think it's an exciting move for Tariq Lamptey, who, as McCubs says, had Chelsea regretting letting him go about 2 years ago. So at stages, he looked that good in his early few games. But yeah, injuries have knocked his progression, let's say. Let's talk about another ex-Chelsea player. I say ex-Chelsea player. He's still at Chelsea, but it looks like the most likely to leave before the window slams shut. Hakim Ziyech to Roma. This comes in from Leneso. Apparently, Ziyech is very keen on the move. Roma need to sell Zaniolo first. So there are these building blocks of if Zaniolo leaves, maybe Ziyech goes to Roma, maybe Saint-Maximin somehow in there as well. It's a classic end-of-window transfer merry-go-round. Yeah. And this would be a sale rather than a loan, according to reports that I read, which makes sense. They've signed Mudryk, they've signed Madueke. I really like Hakim Ziyech. I think he's a quality player. He's 29 now. We saw in the World Cup the sort of quality he can deliver when he's a key member of a side, but he's just never felt like that at Chelsea. I think he was slightly unfortunate. And I remember he joined under Frank Lampard sort of mid-season in about February time. It was post-January window. And then by the time he arrived in the summer, they'd also signed Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, I think.
Yeah.
And they already had Pulisic, they had Tammy Abraham, they had Mason Mount. And it just felt like there was just so much competition suddenly thrown in alongside him. And as he was supposed to be the new star arriving for Ajax after a few excellent years at Ajax, particularly in the Champions League, it felt like his competition and his way to the first team was instantly muddied, and he's really struggled to assert his sort of authority there. There are talks that Everton, or there are rumours rather, that Everton are also linked to him. Sky Sports claim that Chelsea are looking for around £25 million to sell him, which isn't actually that much less than they paid for him originally. So it's not been a disaster from Chelsea's perspective. But yeah, this season ranks 18th in the squad for minutes, only 4 league starts, does need a move away. So best of luck to him. Personally, I think Roma would be an amazing move. If they could afford his wages, I really like Hakim Ziyech. They are, as I said, crying out for more goals, crying out for a little bit more creativity. He's a natural right winger, really, so he would directly replace Zaniolo. I like this. I think he's got every chance to be better than Zaniolo has been over the last 18 months, over the next 18 months. If it's on a short-term deal, can't really see the fault in this. McCubs, let's talk about an even more surprising move. Keylor Navas to Nottingham Forest. This came in from Brian Kelly FC. This would be a turnout for the books.
Yeah, I was really hoping he'd gone to Napoli last summer, but it wasn't to be. Yeah, it'd be pretty mad. Although, I mean, I guess Forest are in a relegation scrap. They've been more than happy to just, play the averages to an extreme extent in terms of signing just, anyone who becomes available. So yeah, I mean, if they need a Dean Henderson, replacement until he comes back mid-February, then I mean, is this? I guess that's what.
Doesn't suggest they really rate Wayne Hennessy, does it?
It doesn't at all. But yeah, I mean, Keylor Navas needs no introduction, does he? I mean, he still made 21 league appearances for PSG last season, with Donnarumma coming in.
More than Donnarumma.
But I mean, yeah, I mean, it would be, by Forest standards, an amazing signing. This is a keeper who I think still on his day is one of the best in the world. He still made 21 league appearances for PSG last season, even after Donnarumma came in. He hasn't had a negative kind of post-shot XG season since the records for that kind of really began, at least in terms of our access to them in 2017-18. So yeah, he saved 8 more goals than XG predicted in 2021. He was more level, he was more kind of equal last year. But yeah, I mean, yeah, he'd be great, wouldn't he? And he's decent with the ball at his feet as well. Yeah, I think that would obviously be a great move for Nottingham Forest. But again, it's just how has no one else come in for him? How, it's like with Zaniolo, it's like, how is this the team that's being linked with him? At least from my kind of purist perspective, at least Nottingham Forest have an esteemed history. But yeah, I think from a Forest perspective, it would be great. He's not getting much game time at PSG now. Yeah, I just wish he was at Napoli. I always wish he was there to win that title with them. He'd have had a great time. But yeah, I can't really knock this move too much, to be honest. If Bournemouth can get him, if Nottingham Forest can get him on a relatively short contract, then I don't really see the downside with this.
What world are we living in? Zaniolo is going to Bournemouth and Keylor Navas is going to Nottingham Forest. Maybe. Mental. I think Keylor Navas was linked with Bayern Munich when Manuel Neuer got injured. But I think Bayern didn't want to. Sorry, I think PSG didn't want to sell or loan to Bayern when they play them in the Champions League next month, which kind of makes sense as well. But what a shocking list of transfers, guys. What do you think of those potential moves? Do you think any of them are likely to come true? Personally, I can't get my head around a lot of those. I did like Tariq Lamptey to Sporting CP, to be honest. And Allan Saint-Maximin, I think he'd be great for Milan. It just seems like a slightly strange decision from Newcastle. But what do you guys think? We want to know your opinion. Let us know in the comments down below. And let's move on to our big match predictions. Lads, as I was saying to McCubs off camera, I did it again last week. Got my weeks confused. It was the Coupe de France last week, or Coupe de la Ligue. No, I think they cancelled that.
France, yeah.
It was the Coupe de France last week. So Marseille-Monaco, which we did the prediction for last week, is actually taking place tonight as you watch this. So go check out our prediction, our full description of that last week, I'm afraid. But I predicted 2-2 in that. McCubs 3-1, Henry 3-2. So this is the week there are actually 12 points on offer, which is quite worrying, actually, because the guy in absentia this week, Henry Hill, had an absolute stormer last week, McCubs. He did really, really well. Firstly, not so well, actually, with RB Leipzig versus Bayern Munich, which finished 1-1, which actually meant 1 point to McCubs. He was the only one that went for a draw in that. But Juventus versus Atalanta, none of us saw that 3-3 draw coming, but Henry did say 1-1, so he gets 1 point. But he get all 3 points, because he went 2-0 for Real Madrid versus Athletic Club, whereas you said 2-1, and I went 1-0. So Henry, on the back of that, is on 25 points. I'm on 33. He's cut the gap considerably there. McCubs is on 19. But if you get a perfect week here, you could be on 31.
Easy.
Could easily happen. As I said, our scorelines for Marseille versus Monaco, 2-2, 3-1 for McCubs, 3-2 for Henry for Marseille. Both McCubs and Henry backing Marseille there. But let's talk about the first big game of this week that is actually taking place this week. Bayern Munich versus Eintracht Frankfurt, Saturday, 5:30 p.m. First versus fourth, there's actually only 5 points between them. McCubs, it's not been an easy return to club football for Bayern Munich.
No, not at all. I mean, I think they've been pretty bad, all in all, haven't they? 2 1-all draws against RB Leipzig and FC Köln. Just to say, by the way, the Bundesliga title race suddenly looks
epic,
tasty. And I no longer feel like such an idiot for suggesting RB Leipzig to win the whole thing in the summer. I mean, it was was it their first 3 to 5 games under Tedesco were just absolutely appalling, and I just felt pretty silly.
Good point, actually. Since Marco Rosa took over, they're probably top.
Probably the form
Should
team.
Have prepared that.
But yeah, I mean, to draw to Leipzig, where they were barely the better team again against Köln. I think they only managed 1.5 xG from 25 shots against Köln. Needed a Joshua Kimmich, wonder strike to actually not lose at home to Köln. So I mean, it's slightly worrying times again for Nagelsmann at Bayern. If he becomes the manager to break that spell of dominance over the Bundesliga, then there will be question marks placed on him, especially after the fact that he was happy to let go of Lewandowski in the summer and rebuild the team more in his image, and the fact that Musiala has been carrying them through some games this season. And I mean, okay, there are some mitigating circumstances. Mane's out, Neuer's out, Mazraoui's out. Gnabry hasn't been Luka Hernandez as well. Gnabry hasn't been as effective as he usually is. I know he got that assist against Leipzig, but he's against Köln, 2 shots, didn't even create a chance. He was subbed off at half time. So it's slightly worrying times for Bayern. And I always hate this because it almost always means that Bayern are about to come out and win 5-0. But they are up against a really good Eintracht Frankfurt side who are going hard for the top 4 now. So I mean, I think it's Union are 3 points behind them. I think Leipzig are 4 points behind them, maybe. And then there's about 3 clubs who are 5 points behind them, including Frankfurt and Dortmund. So I mean, I think this is going to be a really big weekend in the Bundesliga. Why don't you talk about Frankfurt and then I'll come up with mine.
Okay,
I think
you let that ruminate. Yeah, I mean, Frankfurt have been brilliant. They've recovered from the World Cup very well, which we forget that in Germany. I think I heard Rafa Hanningstein or saw him tweet about it. It was a 69-day break, which is absolutely mental. Break. Yeah, that's 2.5 months nearly to not be playing any club football. So of course they're going to lack a bit of rhythm, and suddenly they come back and have this will be their 3rd game in pretty much a week.
How does that work? 69, wasn't it only a month ago that? Oh, I guess because Germany went out quite early.
Yeah, because it went out. Because they went out early. I mean, some of these players were playing for other sides at the World Cup, obviously in that intermittent period, but. Yeah, a lot of not very much football for some of these players, and Eintracht have recovered really well. They beat Schalke 3-0. They drew 1-1 with Freiburg, who Freiburg then got absolutely battered in their second game back. All 4 goals came from different players, including a goal for Colomwani, who never ended up leaving in January, despite there being looking like there was going to be a little bit of interest in him. Maybe one for the summer. It feels like Jesper Lindstrom, they'll be interested in him in the summer.
Sure.
And Evan Ndicka as well has only got 6 months left on his deal, and there's still talk that Barcelona want him as well. So it feels like this is potentially their time before there's a little bit of a couple of key players leaving in the summer is what I'm trying to say. But they're on track for 62 points this season, which would be 20 more than last year, which is great. So we spent the majority of last year saying how effective Eintracht Frankfurt were, particularly in the Europa League, which they went on and won. But they were very mediocre in the Bundesliga. They finished in the bottom half. I think they were 11th. So to be fighting for Champions League football at this stage just goes to show how good a job Oliver Glasner is doing there. And Niko Kovac as well, I'll quickly mention him, how good a job he's doing at Wolfsburg. They've been full of goals since returning as well. And Marco Rose at Leipzig. So it feels like a few managers who had difficult times over the last few years at various clubs are really re-establishing themselves at the sharp end of German football. So in terms of this game, I mean, Bayern have won their last 2 matches, but actually compared to a lot of the big German sides, Frankfurt haven't been too bad against them in the past. They won 3 of the 6 meetings between them before that. So what's that? 3 of their last 8 games they've won, which is not great, but compared to some sides, it's not too bad. I'll tell you what Henry went for. He went 1-1 again.
Okay, interesting.
So he's going for more drop points for Bayern. McCubs, do you agree?
I'm tempted even to go for a Frankfurt win, honestly.
Really?
I'm actually tempted.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I've got points to make up, and this Frankfurt team have been super exciting this season. And I really like that forward line, and I think Bayern's defence has been, pretty poor at points this term, and they've got injuries. So yes, I'm going to go 2-1 Frankfurt.
Absolutely love to see it. That's what he's here for. He's here for the rogue shouts. That's brilliant. Personally, can't see that happening. I think Bayern get back to winning ways quite comfortably. 2-0. 2-0.
This is why you're in the lead.
This is why I do it. Playing the percentages. That's what you got to do. Anyway, let's move on to Napoli versus Roma, Sunday, 7:45 p.m. First versus fifth. There are 13 points between them. McCubs, there's a dogfight for Roma to get into the Champions League, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But the path has never, ever been clearer for Napoli to go on and win the league now.
Yeah, I mean, 12 points clear. They've only dropped points in 3 of 19 games. It's mad how in Europe's top 5 leagues we've had Napoli and Arsenal, 2 teams who at the start of the season weren't even.
Imagine the money you could have won.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, not even they. We were. Well, both teams were being relatively talked down, even in terms of their hopes of making the Champions League.
I was.
And yet they're
I
both
had neither in my top 4. Embarrassing.
I think same here. And the fact that not only are they winning, that they're leading their leagues by comfortable margins. I know Arsenal not as comfortable. You do have City breathing down their next 5 points behind, but they're both putting up like historically, dominant seasons. Like the fact they've only dropped points in 3 games is mad. And they have some fairly easy games coming up as well after Roma. They've got Spezia, who's in 15th, Cremonese, who, have barely been at the races this season. After that, then Sassuolo, who are having a pretty poor season. They're in 17th. And then they have their Champions League tie against Eintracht Frankfurt, which I think will be a super entertaining tie, actually. Just two of the most fun teams to watch in Europe, I think. They rank first for shots in the league. They rank only second behind Fiorentina for shots against. They just lead pretty much every metric in Italy. And like I was alluding to before, level with Arsenal in terms of points in Europe's top 5 leagues. So they've just had an amazing season, haven't they? If you're interested to hear more about that, we've got an explained out on them, which came out a couple of months ago. There's a top 10, looking at the surprising teams this season, where we kind of dig into the numbers a little bit more. However, Roma have also been pretty impressive this term, and probably should be higher on the table if Tammy Abraham was able to put his chances away before Christmas. Great goal midweek against, was it Spezia?
Yeah.
Really lovely, like taking it past 2 men with 2 touches and then, slotting it under the keeper.
Nutmeg.
The kind of, the Tammy Abraham that we want to see. And I feel like last season, maybe the second half of the year will be Tammy's time.
Oh,
I think
it's Tammy time, baby.
It is Tammy time. I just think like Napoli have been great, and obviously that 5-1 win over Juve was such a great marker for where they're at the moment. But I think Roma will give them a better game, and I just fancy Roma to put away a chance. I think it might be 1-1. I just think Napoli. I know their mentality has been great all season, but they are 12 points clear now. I just kind of feel like going into this game, Roma are going to be maybe slightly more up for it, just because they've got a bit more to play for in the immediate. Whereas Napoli, have a few gimmies after this game. So yeah, I'm going 1-1.
There we have it. I love it. I mean, it's not a crazy bet. It's not a crazy bet. I mean, Roma have been better defensively than they have been in quite a while under Mourinho. Their results in big games have picked up under Mourinho as well, which is crucial what they had to do after the time of Fonseca, where they were far too leaky and not getting results in the bigger games as well. And as you say, if they finished more of their chances in the first half of the season, they'd be right up there. I think they've underperformed their XG by over 11. I think it's close to 12 actually. It's the biggest underperformance in Europe's top 5 leagues, and it's not even particularly close as well. So yeah, slightly annoying actually how this season's planned out for Giallorossi fans. But as I said earlier, this Juve penalty has given them a massive opportunity to secure Champions League football, and yeah, I can see them maybe doing it now. They've had 3 wins and a draw since the World Cup. They're now 1 point behind second place Milan, but only 2 ahead of 6th place Atalanta, and Lazio are in there as well, Inter in there. So it's a fascinating battle from 2nd to 6th or 7th down in Serie A. So I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant to watch. In terms of this game, I'm not just playing the percentages. I just think there's such momentum in Napoli at the moment. I think their whole squad is performing so well, and Gisa performing brilliantly for an assist at the weekend, I believe it was, which was brilliant to see again. And Kim Min-jae at the back is just holding this defence, which on paper it's not full of massive stars. No. Like Mario Rui, Alex Meret in goal, Rahmani alongside him. I really like Giovanni Di Lorenzo.
Great goal as well from him the other day.
Yeah, and it just feels like he's that key to that whole back line. I hope he stays at Napoli for a while actually. But in terms of this one, I'm going 2-1 to Napoli. To Napoli. And you went 1-1.
Point for you there, I imagine.
Let's see what Henry said. Drum roll, please, whilst I get up the WhatsApp. He went 1-1 as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, turn out for the books.
For me and Henry.
Okay, wait till you hear what he went for our next game, which is Real Madrid versus Real Sociedad, Sunday, 8 p.m, second versus third. Ooh. There are now only 3 points between them. McCubs, if you were a Real Madrid fan, would you be worried about the sort of season that Real Sociedad have put together in terms of maybe losing that second spot?
Not massively. I just think...
You think it's a blip?
I think the problem I kind of think the problem in La Liga is that because Real and Barca have... their squads are so much better than everyone else's. It's just almost impossible for anyone else to catch up. And I know Real Sociedad have... they have been great, and I think they probably... right now have the most realistic chance of making Champions League football of the last few years. But they're still more than the sum of their parts, whereas like Real can afford to coast. I don't think they were particularly great against Athletic Club last week. I don't think any of us really expected them to be that great because they've not been performing particularly well. But Benzema and Kroos score like 2 goals that like maybe only Benzema and Kroos can score, really. Like, the Benzema volley was just insane. The Kroos, I can't think of another player who can put that much power on a placed finish like Kroos from outside the box. So, maybe, I guess maybe like De Bruyne. But, that's the big difference. So I don't think Real fans will be particularly worried. They do have a big injury list though at the moment, don't they? Tchouaméni's out, Vasquez, Alaba, Carvajal. Like their defence has looked significantly worse without Alaba. That's no surprise. So I think they can get hurt in this game. I do think they can get hurt in this game. So now I'm coming around to maybe there being a bit of an upset on the cards.
You're going for a third upset?
I don't know if I can go for a third upset this week. If I'm going for 2 already, then one's got to come through, hasn't it? Now, I don't see Sociedad winning at the Bernabeu, but maybe there could be a draw on the cards here. But I don't think... This is the thing. I don't think Bryce Mendes will actually miss this game.
I don't think he is suspended for La Liga.
No, yeah. I always forget like how suspensions
so,
work
at least,
in La Liga. Now, I looked it up before. It doesn't look like he is suspended.
He's been brilliant.
So he's been great. So it'd be lucky that he's in. Oh, I don't know. Come back to me, Dougs. I want to hear your prediction first, actually.
Well, it was exciting to see Real Sociedad give Barcelona a pretty good game up until about 40. Well, actually, throughout the whole game, considering they're down to 10 men for the final 50 minutes after that Bryce Mendes red card for a sort of sloppy challenge on Sergio Busquets. I mean, you can't really have any complaints. It was over the top of the ball and it went down sort of at the lower part of his shin. But Ousmane Dembele felt like the real difference maker in that game. I thought he was exceptional. He is so fun to watch. He's one of those players that whenever he gets the ball, you sort of take an intake of breath, just expecting a bit of magic. And he sort of delivered it on, Wednesday night against Real Sociedad. And Real Madrid also have a game tonight against Atletico Madrid at the Copa del Rey, which means that they'll have a day less to recover. And that will probably take quite a lot out of them. It's already seen like it's quite a heated game behind the scenes with disgraceful scenes with Atletico Madrid fans putting down that banner. Obviously the banner's no problem, but then that sort of mannequin of Vinicius Jr. hanging from a bridge by his neck. Like, what is going on at that club? That needs to be stamped out immediately. And La Liga have been so disappointing with their anti-racism message, well, for years really, but everything to do with Vinicius Jr. in the last 6 months just hasn't been good enough. So expect a highly charged atmosphere on Thursday night, and I really hope Vinicius Jr. scores. That would be a great, great sort of narrative. But in terms of Real Sociedad, they're on form in the league. I think they've won their last 5 games, scoring 11 goals. Sorloth has scored 6 of those, I believe. He's been absolutely brilliant, and they are the second best team by expected points as well. They're now into the Europa League knockouts. They're having another great season under Alguacil, who has finished 7th, 5th, 6th, and now 3rd, or the team was 3rd, in his 3.5 seasons, or 3.5 full seasons. Three full seasons at the club and half of this season. You get what I mean? Because I think he took over halfway through the previous one. Anyway, great manager. I'm really excited to see where he goes next. Actually, I always kind of find that a little bit annoying when we're always like, oh, I wonder where he goes next. Stay at Real Sociedad. You're doing a great job. In terms of this game, I know that Henry's gone for a 1-1 draw.
Oh, yes.
As a spoiler. I don't feel... I've been a bit boring this week. Shall I just go for a... Am I just being swept along by McCubbin's discerning look every time I go for the favourite to win? Yeah, I am. I've been swept along. I'm going 2-1. Wait, did Henry go 1-1 or 2-1? I'm now doubting myself. Henry went 2-1 Sociedad.
Wow, okay.
I'm going to go 1-1. I'm going to go for a draw.
Well, okay. I was going to go for 1-1 as well. Do I do that? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to join you on that, Dukes. I'm going to join you on a 1-1.
Henry is going to be so annoyed when that 1-1 comes through. But there we have it. Has the ski air got to Henry's head and he's gone for a 2-1 Sociedad win at the Bernabeu? I mean, it could happen. It could happen. They are having a great season. So let's see what materialises in those games. But guys, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Let us know your predictions for those games in the comments down below, as well as any shock transfers that you think could happen before deadline day. McCubs, what would you like to push to?
Go and check out yesterday's scout report. We did 3 smart transfers that you may have missed this January. It was a tough one, actually, because
hasn't been a lot.
There hasn't been many transfers in Europe, and I didn't really want to profile Rutter to Leeds because, it's quite a lot of money. And I thought it would be good to shine a light on the business that clubs in, Spain, France have done this January, because it has been relentless Premier League kind of speculation, hasn't it, over the last month. And there have been some interesting moves that I've quite liked, especially at Marseille and Lens, who are chasing down PSG in Ligue 1. Go and check that out.
Saw you include a little Girona favourite of mine as well.
I did, yes.
Go check it out, guys. No more spoilers on that one. And get ready for Stat Wars, the league tomorrow. It returns. The league marches on. The table is incredibly tight at both ends. There's a sort of 2-way relegation battle, really, and about a 5-way title battle, which you should watch it develop in the next couple of weeks, because we filmed a few episodes ahead, so I kind of know how it develops, but it gets pretty exciting, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Eurofoot Daily, and we'll catch you later. We'll catch you next week, rather. Yeah. Goodbye.